desirestaurant.co.uk to view the full menu and order online. 60-seat capacity and a private function room. Catering service also available. Desi Restaurant, 298 Lincoln Road, Peterborough, PE1 2ND. Call us now on 555 795.
So every time I go to a city, I have someone come up to me and usually...
Assalamu alaikum. You're listening to Salaam Radio on 106.2 and online at salaamradio.co.uk. Welcome to the Immigration Hour with your host Amjad Iqbal and co-host Severine Amir. Before we start today's show, I would like to give a brief introduction about myself. My name is Amjad Iqbal. I am an immigration practitioner and I've been practicing immigration law for approximately 15 years. I've been working in Peterborough, I've been working in Bedford, and I've been working in London. And I've got a lot of experience in advocacy. That was my main area of specialty. I have with me, and I'm also OSC Level 3 advisor, where I am qualified to make entry clearance applications, bail applications, grounds of appeal, represent myself to the tribunal, and go to the upper tribunal as well. Now, I would like Severine, my co-host, to introduce herself. Hi, Severine.
Salaam alaikum, everyone. I have to say salam alaikum to 4 little ones who are listening to us with a lot of attention this evening. Sakina, Rukia, Sinan and Faris, salam alaikum. I'm also an immigration practitioner with over 15 years experience dealing with immigration cases in both the charity and the private sector. I work for over 10 years in the charity and work in solicitor's practice the rest of the time. Over the years, I've helped many clients securing their leave to remain in the UK, and my caseload has been varied, ranging from entry clearance application to more complex asylum and deportation matter. I'm registered at OISC Level 3, and I'm also accredited with the SRA, the Solicitor Regulatory Authority, at Level 2 at the supervisor level. I also do pro bono work because I helping vulnerable people, despite the fact that I'm working in a private practice at the moment.
Thank you very much, Severine. Just a reminder to our listeners that the aim of our show is to offer tips, guidance, and general information on the topics covered, but it is not to replace or be taken as definitive legal advice for your individual case. So I urge all the listeners, if they have any immigration issues, they seek advice from a legal representative who's qualified in immigration law. Tonight's topic, Severine, it's going to be about asylum. If I just give a sort of brief introduction how we're going to proceed with our show today. In the first part of our show, we'll give you an overview of the asylum process, and in the second part of the show, we will take questions from our listeners. You can contact us by phone on 01733 602 133, by text and WhatsApp on 077 4527 8978. We are also live on Facebook. Now, the show is going to be in English, but we are able to speak several other languages, including Urdu, Punjabi, Pahari, and Severine, French. Please do not hesitate to contact us if you have any questions on tonight's topics or to clarify something that we have said during our show. Now, Severine, as you are aware, over many years, we have seen many people coming to our offices telling us that they wanted to claim asylum without really understanding what asylum was. On the opposite, we had people who should have made an application but did not because they were afraid or scared or even wrongly advised by family and friends that they would be sent back to their country if they were to make an application. First of all, it will be useful, in my opinion, Severine, I think you will agree with me, to explain the difference between an illegal entrant, an overstayer, an asylum seeker, and a refuge. Most people find it difficult to differentiate and are using the wrong terminology. So if I could start off, Severine, if you could give me a definition of illegal entrant in terms of immigration law, please.
You are very correct, Brother Amjad. People seem to find it very difficult and are mixing the terminology because they don't understand, and most importantly, because sometimes the media are portraying migrants in a negative way. So as far as the general population is concerned, any person coming to the UK is either an illegal migrant or an overstayer. An illegal migrant is a foreign national arriving in the UK, crossing the border of a country in violation of its immigration law. An overstayer is a foreign national who stays in a country longer than permitted by his visa. A lot of people, for example, will arrive with a visitor's visa, arrive in the UK for 6 months, but for special reasons decide to stay in the UK. Some people don't get legal advice, despite the fact that they could get extensions or they could get a different visa, but stay in the UK illegally because they don't know or because they are badly advised by mainly their family and friends.
Okay, coming back onto the overstayer. So if somebody becomes an overstayer in the UK, what sort of advice would you give them that they should do?
An overstayer, clearly, if they were to come to my office, I would first of all check whether or not there is a possibility for them to regularize their stay. Obviously, as an overstayer, you are in breach of the immigration rules. So it means that you can be detained and sent back to your country of origin unless you can make an application to vary your or to regularize your stay in the UK.
And if they can't do either of that, they must leave the UK.
Unfortunately, my advice would be that they have to leave the UK, go back to their country of origin and make a different application to come back if they want to come to the UK.
And then asylum seeker, what's the definition of an asylum seeker?
An asylum seeker is a person who has made an asylum application and is waiting for a decision on his application or a decision on his appeal. So he made an asylum, is known to the authorities and is waiting for a decision.
And finally, refugee.
A refugee is a person who has already gone through the system, the asylum process, and just been granted refugee status. So a refugee is someone who has the right to stay, to work, to study, and to claim benefit in the UK. A refugee is also able to travel, except to his country of origin, obviously.
Right, you said he's not able to travel to his or her country of origin. Why is that?
Generally, a refugee is a person who is in fear of persecution in his country of origin. So therefore, going back to their country of origin would be going back to where they fear persecution. And therefore, that will be a reason as to why they would no longer be recognized as a refugee.
And what if they go back to their country region, what will happen to their status?
That's a difficult one. Okay, if they go back to their country of origin, what could happen to their status is the status could be revoked. But obviously, they will need to seek legal representation. And if there is a valid reason as to why they go back, for example, someone who's lost their mom and dad, or they've lost a child or someone in their family, sometimes people will react with their emotion instead of reacting with their reasons. And they will go back to their country of origin. In this case, I would advise such a person to seek legal representation, make representation to the Home Office in order to try not to lose their refugee status, which is an excellent status because it gives you a lot of rights to stay, to work, to study, to claim benefit.
Thank you for that. Now, before we go any further, I think we need to explain our listeners when was the status of refugee created, so they can get a bit of background. If you could shed some light on that, please.
Yes, the Refugee Convention is the key international instrument following the Second World War. I know it's a long time, and some of listeners were probably not born then, but everybody knows that some atrocities were committed against people because of their religions, because of their political opinion, and also because of their sexual orientation, for example, and also because of their ethnic origin. I'm thinking about the Roma community, for example, in Czech Republic, who were persecuted. So in reaction to what happened during the Second World War, the United Nations decided that this should not happen again, and therefore something should be put in place. First, the 1951 convention concerned people who were persecuted before the 1st of January 1951. And then as the time moved on, they realized that atrocities were still happening in the world. And in 1967, there was the limitation of the 1951 convention was in fact extended to anyone who feared persecution. And in the UK, it was incorporated into the law in the early 90s.
Okay. So going on forward onto that, what is the definition of a refugee?
A refugee is someone who has a well-founded fear of persecution. You need to understand, or listeners need to understand, that the definition of refugee, every word has got a meaning. Every word in the definition is important. So someone who has a well-founded fear of persecution in his country of origin for one of the following reasons: because of his race, number one, because of his religion, because he's a member of a particular social group, because of his political opinion, or because he's avoiding military service. Also, this person must be outside his country of nationality. And because of this fear of persecution, is unwilling to seek protection from his state. Okay? So this is someone who will be vulnerable because he fears persecution from the state in his country of origin for one of the following reasons.
Okay. To clarify, who can apply for asylum?
Anyone can apply for asylum who has a well-founded fear of persecution. However, there are some countries where it will be extremely difficult for the people to get asylum. And I'm thinking, for example, of people from the Eastern European countries where everybody knows that Romas will be persecuted very badly in Slovakia and are still persecuted, are still discriminated. But they will find it very difficult to be granted refugee status because they are in their country, there is a mechanism in place, or at least they are trying to put a mechanism in place for protection.
Right. Now, you've mentioned the 5 convention reasons. For the listeners' sake, could you please elaborate and give examples so that our listeners are clear?
Okay. One of the first convention is someone has a well-founded fear of persecution in his country of origin because of his race, ethnic origin or nationality. With regards to this element or this criteria, race will be, to give you an example and to come back to the Roma. The Roma were persecuted in the Second World War by the Nazi, but they are still persecuted in many Eastern European countries. And even in the UK, for example, where we are a society respecting human rights, travelers' rights are sometimes it's very difficult for them. But race will be, for example, someone who is persecuted because he's a Roma or because he's from a different ethnic origin. I can remind our listeners to the conflict back in the 90s, if I'm correct, in Rwanda, where the Tutsis and the Hutus were fighting one another. With regards to religion, we've got people who are still persecuted because they are Christians, Christians in Pakistan, or Ahmadi people are persecuted, not given the same rights as other people in Pakistan, but there are other countries also, in Iran, for example. People are persecuted. Coptic Christians in Egypt are particularly persecuted. So those people will fit into those criteria. Membership of a particular social group will be people who are in a group, such as people with a different sexual orientation, or women in certain countries, like women in Pakistan, tend to be persecuted also, if they've got no support from their families, or their political opinion. people are often persecuted in some countries because of their political opinion. I'm thinking most particularly of people in Zimbabwe, for example, who for years and years they've been persecuted by the ZANU-PF.
Because they were associated to a particular political group.
Because they were associated with a particular social group, yes.
Right. Thank you very much for that. Now, going forward, how and where can you make an asylum application?
In order to make an asylum application, there is two possibilities. Either the person comes from her or his country of origin and makes the asylum application immediately when they arrive in the UK. So it could be at the seaport or at the airport or at the train station in Waterloo, for example. So those people will make the application as soon as they arrive in the UK. For some people, it's a bit more complicated. They will be, for example, found out by immigration, the ones who are traveling on the back of a lorry, and then when they are found out, they make their asylum claim. Or finally, you've got people who come to the UK, stay for a while in the UK, and then go and decide they can't return to their country of origin because their life is in danger. And those ones will have to make their asylum application directly at the Home Office.
So do you always have to go in person? Is there any circumstance that will allow you to claim asylum differently?
No. In order for you to make an asylum claim, first of all, you need to make an appointment. You need to call a particular number that will go on our Facebook page for people who are interested in claiming asylum. So you need to call the Asylum Intake Unit Monday to Friday. They will take details from you. They will ask you whether or not you need an interpreter. They will take your name, your date of birth, basic information from you. And later on, they will send you a letter with a date where you need to go to Croydon and make your asylum application.
Okay. Now, you've mentioned delay in claiming asylum. Now, if somebody makes a delay in claiming asylum, what sort of impact would that have on their application?
That will affect their credibility because someone who is in fear of persecution should make an asylum application as soon as they arrive in the UK. That's the view that the Home Office is taking. They are saying if you delay claiming asylum, it's because you are not really in fear of persecution. This is not always true, obviously. But yes, delaying your asylum claim will have an effect on your credibility.
Say, for example, if I could share that with you as well, it's if somebody comes to the UK as a visitor and they have to show social, economic and family ties in their country of origin. And when they come to the UK and they claim asylum, Home Office always uses that as false representation, deception, misrepresentation, and that can also affect your asylum claim. Would you agree on that?
Of course, it will affect your asylum claim because when you arrived in the UK on a visitor's visa, the first question, or the condition of your visitor's visa is that you return to your country of origin at the end of the stay. Of course, when you arrive at Heathrow or Gatwick or Birmingham Airport and they ask you, why are you coming to the UK? And you say to visit my family. I will go back. Obviously, that would be seen as misleading, which is not always the case because some people have got no choice.
There may be an exception to that if you could prove that there's been indiscriminate violence in your country of origin or the circumstances have changed, then possibly yes, otherwise your credibility will be undermined.
Yes, of course. If you are, I'm sure you are thinking of Libya, where at the moment there is very strong case law about the country being unsafe. So
now,
yes.
What is a screening interview?
A screening interview is the opportunity for the Home Office to take basic information from you. So they are very, very basic information. But unfortunately, those basic information will follow you always during your asylum claim. Even if your case goes to the Supreme Court, the screening interview will always be there. So it's very important to tell the truth in the screening interview. So
the screening interview is basically information about you, your full name, date of birth, your family.
Yes,
why can't you go back? So it's basic information.
Basic information about your traveling history. Obviously, if you came on a plane, it's very easy. But some people would have very complex way of traveling in the UK. I'm thinking about Afghanistan, people from Afghanistan will generally travel across Europe and will not directly come to the UK. So in the screening interview, you've got those elements. In the screening interview, you've got short questions, and nobody will ask you, obviously, to expand on it. But what you say in the screening interview will follow you around forever.
So it's very important.
Yes.
You get the facts right.
Very, very important.
How long does it take, a screening interview?
Generally, when you go for your appointment, I would say all day, because it's not the length of time that the screening interview will take, but it's more the fact that you will have to wait. And unfortunately, at the Home Office, you can wait. Definitely, I would say, or the all day. So I would say it takes the all day.
Okay. So if a person goes in person and they cannot speak English, what do they do? Do they get interpreters, or how does that work?
Of course, they will get an interpreter. And again, it's very important that if they don't understand the interpreter, they need to say so at the beginning. Yeah. As you know, for example, Arabic is spoken from Morocco to Iraq. People are not speaking Arabic in the same way. There is a difference in languages. And an Iraqi may not understand the Sudanese interpreter who still speak Arabic but will have difficulties with the accent. So if you are in a position where you go for a screening interview, you don't understand the interpreter, don't try to understand the interpreter, but say so from the beginning.
Okay. Now, some people would like to take their family members with them at the interview. Can they do that?
Generally, I would say generally, you can't do that. Exceptional circumstances, a very frail old lady, for example, in the case, one of my case, where a very frail old lady went and claimed asylum. Yes, she was allowed, the son was allowed to go with her. But I would say generally, no.
Okay. Now, we haven't spoken about the funding. If you want to claim asylum, do you get legal aid, or do you have to pay privately?
No. Asylum seekers are still entitled, thanks God. The Conservative government has not removed that. And I'm waiting for the general election, because we are promised by the Liberal Democrats and Labour that legal aid will come back a little bit more widely in various areas of the law. So at the moment, we've still got legal aid for asylum cases. So it means that they don't have to pay. But there are some restrictions. In the past, for example, legal representatives could attend screening interviews or could attend certain interviews. This has been removed from them.
In terms of if somebody wants to take a legal representative with them at the screening interview, is that allowed?
It's allowed for you to have legal representation, of course. They cannot deny you to have legal representation, but you need to take into consideration that it may not be very useful because the questions are very simple, but also because your legal representative will be in a position where he cannot really interfere or say anything in your favor.
So, if I'm right to understand, that it's best that you see your legal representative prior to the screening interview rather than taking with you at the screening interview, because you will not be able to intervene or add anything to the screening interview.
That's correct. It's better to go and seek legal representation as soon as possible.
Another important question what people or listeners want to know is that when you go for your screening interview, is there any possibility that you could be detained?
Yes, there is a possibility that you will be detained. There is always a possibility for you to be detained if you are subject to immigration control and if you don't have leave to remain in the UK. Obviously, yes, there is a possibility. Now, it's probably, at the moment, it's probably less than before because there is no longer a fast track. Asylum system doesn't exist anymore. So probably less than previously, but there is still a risk.
So would you agree with me that it depends on your answers that the Home Office will determine whether we need to detain this particular individual or not?
Yes, that's true. Also, it depends the country you are coming from originally,
and the answers you give.
Also the reasons as to why you are claiming asylum.
What if you have children? Are the chance of still being detained?
It's very unlikely that you will be detained if you've got children or if you are a victim of torture or if you are pregnant or if you've got a disability.
Now, At the end of the screening interview, what sort of documents are you given by the Home Office?
Generally, you are released on bail, on immigration bail. You will be given some reporting conditions. The reporting conditions may vary, so you could be given reporting conditions and have to go and report every 4 weeks, every week. It just depends on what is given to you. And also you are given a statement of additional ground. It means that, for example, some people have not disclosed everything to the Home Office. They've only disclosed part or only the fact that they want to claim asylum. But if there is any other reason as to why you still want to stay in the UK, in this case, you've got the opportunity in your statement of additional ground to explain to the Home Office what are the additional reasons you want to stay in the UK.
So additional grounds are there for the people to mention everything and anything because they don't want to delay the process.
That's exactly the case.
This is the sort of tactic what people were used to use, and we used to delay the process. Now, after screening interview, if somebody doesn't go back, what would happen then?
If you don't go back after the screening interview, then what will happen is the Home Office will send you some interview dates. And if you don't attend those interview dates, they will treat your asylum application as abandoned, or they may refuse you on non-compliance. That will have an effect if later on you say, oh, I've changed my mind and I've decided that I still want my claim to carry on.
So if in the future, if you want to make an asylum claim again, what sort of impact will that have on your claim?
You cannot make an asylum claim again. What you can do is it can be dealt by further representation way. So instead of making an asylum claim, you will have to
okay, so
make fresh representation.
We're going to a short break. I will urge listeners to carry on listening to us. We'll be back. Stay tuned to Salaam Radio. And we'll carry on after the break. Thank you.
Stay tuned to Salaam Radio after this short ad break.
It doesn't take much to bring some difference. You give some change, which makes a change. Because nothing gets mileage like a charity. Just a little change turns into a chain. And before we know it, the results are massive. So give a little to make a big difference. For donations, call now. UKIM 0207 387 2157.
Had a car accident or an accident at work? Accident specialists are experts in no-win, no-fee accident claims. Leave the hassle to us. Our multilingual settlement experts will manage the entire claims process on your behalf, with nothing to pay up front. We provide services such as credit hire, taxi vehicles, recovery, storage and much more. For full details on our range of services and a free consultation, call us on 01733 555 774 or visit our office at 249 Lincoln Road opposite the NatWest Bank. Accident Specialists. Start your successful claim today.
Do you own a restaurant or takeaway? Cater Fair is an expert supplier of new and used commercial catering equipment. Visit caterfair.co.uk for quality equipment on sale at the lowest prices, or call us on 01733 310 115 or visit us at 11 Royce Road, Fengate, Peterborough.
जब बात हो हलाल मीट की तो कैसे मुमकिन जिक्र न हो हाजी बाबा का। हाजी बाबा अज़दा में आपके लिए। हम अज़दा में अरसा 10 साल से जायद मुल्क भर में 45 से जायद काउंटर्स के साथ बेहतरीन पैकेजेस, हर वैरायटी का मीट और आला मायार के लिए आइए हमारे पास। चिकन ब्रेस्ट, चिकन क्यूब या कीमा सिर्फ 3.99 पाउंड पर केजी, लैम या शीप लेग, लैम शोल्डर और मिक्स सिर्फ 6.99 पाउंड पर केजी, बेबी चिकन सिर्फ 1.99 पाउंड पर केजी। आपकी सहूलत के लिए वक्त की बचत और मायार की जमानत, तमाम हलाल गोश्त और अशिया जरूरत एक ही छत के नीचे। हाजी बाबा हलाल मीट, फाइंड अस इन अज़दा।
Salaam Radio presents General Election Hustings, Thursday the 5th of December, 8 to 10 p.m. at the Allama Iqbal Centre, 157 Cromwell Road, PE1 2EL. Doors open 7:30 p.m. for a prompt 8 p.m. start. All are welcome. please arrive early to avoid disappointment, as entry will be forbidden when capacity reached. Broadcast live on Salaam Radio 106.2 FM and online at salamradio.co.uk. Watch live on Salaam Radio Facebook, Twitter and YouTube. General Election Hustings, presented by Salaam Radio, Thursday the 5th of December, 8 to 10 p.m. at the Allama Iqbal Centre, Peterborough.
Feel like some great tasting chicken tonight? Great meal deals, wraps, burgers and sides. We've got it all at Chicken Palace. Call and collect at 302 Lincoln Road on 01733 702 447 or 8 Park Road on 01733 343750. Chicken Palace, open 11 a.m. till late.
When we go to bed, we say, بِإِسْمِكَ اللَّهُمَّ أَمُوتُ وَأَحْيَا بِإِسْمِكَ اللَّهُمَّ أَمُوتُ وَأَحْيَا بِإِسْمِكَ اللَّهُمَّ أَمُوتُ وَأَحْيَا.
Welcome back. You are listening to Salaam Radio on 106.2 and online at salamradio.co.uk. Just a reminder to our listeners that the aim of our show is to offer tips, guidance and general information on the topics covered, but it's not to replace or be taken as definitive legal advice for your individual cases. Severine, before we start on our topic, I've got a few questions which I would like to read out, and if you could kindly respond. I've got a question from Dr. Shabina. She says, if a person has been deported and is on the plane, can they claim asylum as a refugee to prevent them from travelling back?
Okay. Again, terminology. With regards to deportation only applies for people who have criminal activities in the UK and who have been sentenced, and those people can be deported. For any other person, we are talking about removal. So clearly, if someone is on the plane and doesn't want to go back, yes, of course, they can claim asylum. And the good thing about claiming asylum is they cannot return you back. So if you are sitting on the plane back to Kingston, Jamaica, and you make an asylum claim, or to Islamabad, Pakistan, and you make an asylum claim before the plane obviously has taken off, yes, they need to take you off the plane. The only difficulties in that is that you will need to explain why you did not claim asylum earlier. Yes, so you will have some credibility issues. But yes, otherwise you can, yes.
So you can claim asylum at any time, but again, what if, for instance, where a person has already claimed an asylum and they want to claim asylum again, would that have an impact?
No, you cannot. Once you've claimed asylum once in the UK, you cannot claim asylum twice. So the only possibility for you to claim asylum again will be for you to go out of the UK. And it happens. Someone will go out of the UK, will be sent back to their country of origin, but within 3 or 4 days will be back in the UK, and then they can lodge a new asylum claim.
Well, otherwise, they could always make a fresh claim, representations,
yes,
where they have different information, evidence to show that they have a claim.
Yes,
that's an option.
If they've got fresh evidence, yes, they will need to make a fresh asylum claim.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, going back to our topic. Just to remind our listeners that we're talking about asylum, the procedure and what's involved in it. And straight to our question again, we were talking about the screening interview, and you explained what screening interview entailed, who can attend, what is involved in it, what sort of documents you are given after the screening interview. And then I just want to know, and if you could inform the listeners, what happens after the screening interview?
After the screening interview, generally the person will receive a letter and will be called for a substantive interview, where they will discuss in details with their home office caseworker their reasons for claiming asylum. This is really, really important for someone to seek legal advice before their substantive interview. Before the substantive interview, they need to see a lawyer. They need to explain in details why they are claiming asylum. Like we said earlier, legal aid is available. Legal aid solicitors are scarce, unfortunately, but you still need to go and try your best to seek a legal advice.
So am I correct to understand that this statement that you need to prepare for the substantive interview is very, very vital and important in your case? If the case is refused and it goes to the tribunal or to the High Court or the Court of Appeal, Supreme Court, that will be your base.
Yes.
So it's very important that your statement is prepared. Now, what should be involved in a statement?
In the statement, you need to explain, a person will explain why they seek asylum in the UK, who they fear in their country of origin. They will explain anything that happened to them, why the authorities have not been able to help them. It's very difficult for people to disclose their whole story. And they need to trust their lawyers, and their lawyers also, to a certain extent, needs to be able to ask the right questions in order to get the right answer.
So, am I correct to understand that the statement needs to be thorough?
Of course.
Not just a general statement?
No, it's not a general statement. Absolutely not. It's not. It's really about someone's life. It's really personal. You cannot make a general statement. In order, for example, to get information from someone who's been raped or someone who's been a victim of torture, it's not possible to do it in one meeting. You need to see people 3 times, 4 times, sometimes more. And that's very difficult, for example, for a legal aid lawyer who will be working with a very, very small amount of money, but they still have to try to make the best and see their client as often as possible.
Now, you've spoken about rape here. I understand, Severine, that there are some people who come from a particular country where they will not open to a male home office caseworker. In that sort of scenario, what should they do?
Again, we go back to the screening interview. I say the screening interview is a very, very small interview, but so important because in the screening interview, towards the end of the interview, you are asked whether or not you would like to have a particular gender, a caseworker of a particular gender, a female or a male. So it's important for a lady, for example, to say no. A lady who has been raped, she may not want to disclose it to a male caseworker. And in these particular circumstances, the Home Office will arrange to have a female caseworker and also to have a female interpreter.
So it's important for listeners to understand that if they have an issue where they can't open up a particular claim, where they don't feel comfortable with a caseworker who's a male on the other side, they can always ask for a female caseworker.
Of course they can.
Okay, going back to the substantive interview, how long does it take and who can be present?
Okay, at the substantive interview, generally you will have the Home Office caseworker, you will have the Home Office interpreter. The interviews are nowadays can happen face-to-face, but they can also happen through Skype. They will be audio taped, and you will get a written record of the interview. You can take your legal representative if your legal representative is willing to come with you. They can also take an interpreter with them. But your legal representative will not be able to interrupt, or in very exceptional circumstances, they are able to interrupt. But generally, they are not able to interrupt. So they will just be sitting with you and verifying that you are okay. They have the opportunity to make comments at the end of the interview. But you have to understand that the comments are about the interview, not about what is inside the answers. Yes.
Okay. Following the substantive interview, how long does it take to receive a decision?
Following the substantive interview, what your lawyer will do generally, they will write representation to the Home Office. They won't repeat the facts because the facts are already in the witness statements that are in the interview. They will, however, explain if there is any mistakes in the interview. They will put the mistakes or the misunderstanding right, and they will make their legal submissions explaining why you should be granted leave to remain as a refugee.
Okay.
Following this, generally the Home Office is trying to decide cases within 6 months, but it doesn't happen at the moment. We have to admit that generally cases are decided within a year or sometimes within 2 years.
So I'm right to understand that when you go for an interview, your full interview, and when you get the notes, it's very important that you bring that record back to your lawyer. You go through it with your lawyer. If there are any misunderstandings, or if you disagree with a response or a question, that is rectified in the further representations. That's your only chance to get it changed. Is that correct?
That's correct. Again and again, we cannot repeat how important it is to, if there are mistakes, correct them at the first opportunity.
Okay. Okay, now, talking about the benefits, are asylum seekers entitled to any benefits?
Asylum seekers are not entitled to benefit as we know it. Universal credit, housing benefit, council tax rebate, whatever, they are not entitled to benefit. There is a special support for asylum seeker called NAS support. They receive much less than someone on standard benefit. They receive only £37.75 a week. For each person in their household, which is not a lot. They are entitled to free NHS, and their children can be educated in the UK. But it's really, really a small amount of money when you need to take into consideration that they have to pay electricity, gas, and all that. At the end, they don't have a lot of money left.
So they're not entitled to universal credit?
No,
they're
absolutely
only entitled
not.
to NAS support?
They're only entitled to NAS support, providing that their asylum claim is still outstanding.
Outstanding, okay. Can an asylum seeker volunteer if they wanted to work and their decision is pending before the Home Office? Are they entitled to work?
Okay. Asylum seekers are not allowed to work unless the Home Office has not taken the decision within a year of them claiming asylum. So yes, they can work. After a year, they need to seek permission. But they cannot do any job. They cannot go and work in a takeaway. They cannot do, small jobs or low-skilled jobs. They have to have a job who is on the shortage occupation list.
Which will be difficult.
Which will be extremely difficult, knowing that you've got, for example, people such as mechanical engineers and I think geographers are on the list. So basically, the Home Office has given something, but at the same time has taken it away because none of the asylum seekers, or extremely rarely, will be able to work whilst their asylum application is being decided.
Okay. Now
they can volunteer, however, proper volunteer job. Yeah, proper volunteer job. They can volunteering for a charity, for example, they can do that.
Okay. Now let's go back to the decision. This is I think the exciting part. What sort of the possible decisions can an asylum seeker receive from the Home Office?
If they are lucky and if they are recognized as a refugee, they will be granted leave to remain as a refugee for 5 years. Or they can be granted humanitarian protection because their life, the Home Office recognize that their life will be in danger if they go back, but not because of one of the convention reasons. So they will be given humanitarian protection. Or they can be given discretionary leave to remain, but that will be only generally for 3 years.
3 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
So refugee status, humanitarian protection, generally for 5 years, discretionary leave to remain.
Or outside the immigration rules.
Or outside the immigration rules for 3 years.
So each of them lead to settlement with their own period.
They do lead to settlement, but obviously...
Going back to the 5 years refugee status, when someone is given a refugee status and they have family abroad in their country of origin, can they travel to their country of origin?
No, they cannot travel to their country of origin. If someone is given refugee status, they cannot go back to their country of origin. Or they shouldn't go back to their country of origin because that's where they fear persecution.
What if they do travel to their country of origin? What would happen?
If they travel to their country of origin, it could happen that their refugee status will be revoked or cancelled.
So what sort of advice would you give to the listeners that if they had to, is a must, that they have to travel to the country region, what should they do?
They should seek legal advice, and that will be the first thing they should do. They should seek legal advice, speak with a professional, see what can be done, what are their reasons, why do they have to go back, is there another option, what can we do for them.
Okay, so that was if they are granted.
Yes.
That's the outcome. What if the asylum application is refused? Would they get a right of appeal? Would they not get a right of appeal?
Generally, they will get a right of appeal and their case will be heard by the first-tier tribunal. Some people, however, if their asylum case is such that it's very poor, their fear of persecution is really not, is clearly unfounded, decided clearly unfounded, they will not be given a right of appeal in country. They will be given a right of appeal out country, so it means they have to go back to their country of origin before they can make an appeal.
The case will be certified?
Their case will be certified, yes.
So they can only appeal when they leave the UK.
Yes.
Now, if somebody wanted to challenge that, they disagreed with the Home Office certification, what would they have to do?
Okay, the only way you can challenge a certification would be through judicial review.
Okay, but judicial review, okay, yeah. Okay. And if it's refused, then they have a right of appeal. How would that process work?
If they've got a right of appeal, generally 14 days from the date of the decision, they have to lodge their appeal to the first-tier tribunal. Following that, they will receive a date. Generally, it's in 2 dates. The first date is a pre-hearing review, where the representative goes and explains whether or not with the judge and the Home Office to see if there is anything that can be agreed. Very rarely in asylum cases there is anything to be agreed. So the next date will be the full hearing date, where the client has to get ready and for an immigration judge to make a decision on the facts of the case.
Now, again, on funding, as you understand, people who come from abroad and they've entered the UK illegally, they're not allowed to work. If they claim asylum, they are limited to NAS support. How would they be able to fund their appeal process?
Again, the legal aid is available for those people. Obviously, because we are using public fund, legal aid, the legal aid lawyer will have to conduct what is called the merits test to see whether or not there is a chance for him or for her to win the case in court. They have to show that there is at least 50% chance of success.
So there's a means test.
There is a means test
merits test.
and a merits test.
In terms of means, I don't think they should have any problem. It's just a merits test.
Yeah, it's just a merits
they have to
test.
satisfy.
Yes, that's correct.
Now, when a person is given 5 years refugee status, what do they do after that? Once they've completed the 5 years?
When they've completed the 5 years, they can apply for settlement in the UK. In the past, we need to go back a little bit in history. Before 2010, someone who was granted refugee status was granted indefinite leave to remain straight away.
That was in 2005, am I correct?
2005, sorry, yes, in 2005. After 2005, the government decided that, in fact, no, they shouldn't be granted immediately indefinite leave to remain. We're going to grant them a period of 5 years. And if their country is improving, if the situation is getting better, we may do a review if we feel like it, and then, grant you indefinite leave to remain. Generally, after 2010, the first people who applied for settlement got it. So there was not a very, very strict review. Unfortunately, Theresa May changed that, and in March 2017, decided that cases should be reviewed actively, an active review of the cases for people who are applying for settlement. It led, in my opinion, to outrageous decision. To give you an example, I had an old lady, 70 years old lady from Egypt, Coptic Christian, where Coptic Christian in Egypt are persecuted. They are still persecuted. It's every day. It's there. It's in the public domain. This poor lady applied for settlement. We were thinking that there would be absolutely no problem. And she received a letter from the Home Office telling her that they were reviewing actively her case and they thought that Egypt was safe for her and she could go back. you need to put everything into the context. She had 2 children who are British. Her grandchildren were here. Her husband had died in the UK and was buried in the UK. She's 78 years old with dementia, relying on her daughter, and she was told, "We reviewed your case. You are going back home because it's safe for
It's safe
you."
for you to travel.
Successfully, we had a success on that. I managed to challenge successfully this decision, and refugee status was reinstated. But I want our listeners to be aware, and people who are on refugee status at the moment, then when they make their application, they could be issued with those type of outrageous decision, and more often than before.
Okay, now we're talking about review. So in terms of you to make a successful application, you to show that you've integrated in the UK society, what sort of advice or tips would you give to those people who are on the refugee status?
People who have refugee status, obviously it's very important. You know, you are granted 5 years leave to remain. You've got the same right as nearly as a British citizen or someone with indefinite leave to remain. So you are able to work, you are able to study. Studying English is very important because that's the first level of integration. When you can understand people, it's the first level. So I would advise people to educate themselves, go and work, participate, join in community, do some voluntary work, and everything will go towards their integration into the UK.
In essence, if you adopt the UK lifestyle, that will go in your benefit.
I'm not sure that going to the pub will benefit you, but maybe.
Generally, as you rightly said, going to school, working, paying your taxes, doing some voluntary work, so on and so forth. These are sort of factors they will take into account that will make your case strong.
That's correct, yes.
So it's very important. So don't take it for granted that after completing 5 years that you will get indefinite to remain. They will review it. Your application will be subjected to a review.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, going back onto the refusal and going to court, Sev, as you rightly said, that because it's being funded by Legal Aid, they will do a merit test. Means test wouldn't be applicable because they are already on NAS support.
Yes.
Now, say for example, if somebody had some documents that they required translating, or they wanted to have sort of expert opinion from anybody, how would they go about with that?
Obviously, they need to give it to their legal representative. Documents will be translated and get under funding from Legal Aid. And expert reports can be used also and funded by Legal Aid. Everything will depend on your Legal Aid lawyer.
Okay, so in a nutshell, if they have any documents that need to be translated, if they want any documents that they want to show to the Home Office, it's very important that at the outset that they give it to the legal representative, and they could get those documents translated, ready for their application. Now, if the applicant goes to court and his asylum application is refused, he has a right of appeal, a further right of appeal. On what grounds can they challenge or go challenge for further appeal?
It's only on the point of law, so it's not about the facts of the case. And generally in asylum cases, you will notice when you read the decisions, everything is about credibility. You see, the immigration judges can do more or less what they want. They can believe you or they cannot believe you. And same stories, I think back in the days when I was working for a big charity, we had 2 Zimbabwean cases of twin sisters, and one was represented by us and another one was represented by another lawyer. And we were successful with one of the sisters, and the other lawyers were not successful. Same cases, same evidence, but different judges. So you see, it's all about credibility. So the only way to challenge an immigration judge decision will be to challenge it on a point of law. So you need to show that he's not applied the law correctly in order to be successful.
Okay, so in essence, if you wanted to apply for permission, you have to show that judge has made an error of law, or that he has failed to make proper findings in a particular matter. Otherwise, if it's refused on credibility, it's very difficult to challenge on credibility, because a judge is an independent judge. He's entitled to make his findings, and if you do challenge it, the upper tribunal judge will just say that you're in disagreement with the judge. There's no error of law. Okay, so if an asylum seeker has exhausted all of his avenues, what other options available to him or her?
If he's exhausted all his right of appeal, the only option available to the person, if they've got fresh evidence, will be for them to make a fresh asylum claim.
Okay.
But they need to have further evidence in order to do that, and it's not always the case.
Now, I'm going to divert your attention. I've got a question from Abdul. He's saying, if a person has applied for asylum in a European country and decided to leave that country to come to the UK illegally before his asylum claim has been processed, can he bring his claim to the UK?
Oh, no.
In short of time?
No, he can't. Unfortunately, there is what is called the Dublin Convention. It means that if you claim asylum anywhere in the UK, so if I claim asylum in Germany, in Belgium, or wherever, if you claim asylum somewhere in Europe, you cannot apply for asylum again in the UK. You will be returned back to the first country you cross. So in this case, for example, Germany or wherever.
The answer is no.
Yes,
Okay.
the answer is no.
We've got another comment from Asad Qayyum. Is saying, very good and informative show. Now,
Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure hosting today's immigration show. We're coming to an end. This is the end of our immigration hour. We hope that you have enjoyed our show. We'll be coming back on Thursday, 12th of December 2019 from 8 p.m. with a new topic. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope our show was informative and you've enjoyed every moment of it. Next time we will be hosting a show. You can ask all the questions, and a topic. We will try to choose a topic that will be interesting and be relevant to you. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Severine. It's been a pleasure.
Enjoy the
Salaam
rest of the
Radio
evening.
presents General Election Hustings, Thursday the 5th of December, 8 to 10 p.m. at the Allama Iqbal Centre, 157 Cromwell Road, PE1 2EL. Doors open 7